Howdy.
Howdy. Do I
Howdy,
sound okay?
howdy. Yeah, you sound fine. What's up?
I don't know. What's up with you?
Not much. We're playing Metroid Prime, which is a fun game. So,
Yeah,
in that respect,
I
things are
played
going well.
I played that a little bit when it came out, but I never beat the whole thing.
Nice.
I
Uh,
did just beat Metroid Dread though. That's pretty good.
we are we're struggling with it now,
Yeah,
as an
those games are
adult,
tough.
styling on our performance as a young one. Anyway, what do you have on your mind today?
Well, first of all, are we going into this with preconceptions of each other? I have preconceptions of you, obviously, but where are you? What's our relationship like right now?
Well, my only preconceptions of you were that you emailed me saying that our opinions might differ on the subjects of gender theory, BLM, and pedophilia,
Yes.
which definitely has, which definitely elicits some preconceptions. I've got to say, a bit of
Oh,
curiosity.
sure. Yeah. It was a saucy way to introduce myself.
Well, hit me up with your introduction then, in an entirely different way then.
Okay, so I'm Mr. Girl. Some of you may remember my Cuties review. I think that's the thing I'm most well known for last year.
Oh,
Um,
son of a bitch! Yeah, I remember that.
it got me banned from YouTube for 4 months.
Yeah, I bet a lot of people reported that one. That's
It did. They reported me for having child porn on my channel, and I guess YouTube takes that pretty seriously, as they should. Absolutely. And then yeah, they just ban you and like check it out later, I guess. But it took a long time to get my channel back.
welcome back.
Thank you.
Uh, Unwarranted accusations on their part, then, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so my channel is it's just like a political commentary and like I saw cuties and like just wanted to dive in, obviously. Um, don't clip that, anybody.
Right.
I so my channel is about empathizing with people who have different political beliefs from you. So empathizing across party lines and trying to understand the parts of yourself that you don't like. Wait, am I on camera?
You are on my camera. Yes.
Okay. I'm just checking. I'm like trying to figure out what's going on. Yeah, so empathizing across party lines, accepting the parts of yourself that are ugly or difficult or that you hate, to have more empathy for other people. So pedophilia was obviously like an interesting topic for me. I've brought it up a couple times, and I'm planning like a much bigger video on it, because that's one where people have a really hard time. Like they really want to distance themselves from humanizing pedophiles. And your channel, some stuff. Oh yeah, also I'm a rapper. I just came out with a rap album.
Ah,
Um,
congratulations.
thank you. It's being pretty well received by my core audience, but we'll see how people react to it beyond that. Um, your channel is pretty partisan.
Yeah, I'd
So
say so.
and it's almost designed to be a pipeline, like kind of the way you talk and interact with people.
Yeah, I would say
Right?
so
Like
as well.
you're trying to draw people towards your view.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
And so and my channel is kind of the opposite of that. Not I'm not trying to drive people away from my view, but it's more about like convincing people to understand and empathize with and kind of humanize those that they disagree with the most. And so we're sort of opposed just in terms of approach, and then I think also our beliefs our values are different too.
Probably. I don't think there's anything antithetical about the positions, though. After all, even if you despise a person and their positions, you have to humanize them because otherwise you alienate yourself from the potential of adopting those views in the future. So, for example, if you completely otherwise or dehumanize, say, fascists, you make it as though they're not human. Well, unfortunately, humans turn into fascists. So, if
Hmm.
you treat them in that way, people adopt the impression that, for example, the Nazis or some entirely otherworldly thing, that it's not really a human issue. It's some magical evil that, snatches
Yeah.
people in their sleep. So you need to be more nuanced than that so people can understand these problems take root in all of us.
that anyone can be turned into a Nazi given the right circumstances.
Certainly.
Um, yes, but I think from what I've seen, and tell me if I'm misinterpreting,
Hmm.
that you also believe that there's sort of a balancing act of giving if you give air to Nazism by empathizing with it, or I guess I just think that you speak very dismissively of ideas that you disagree with, particularly ideas that you super disagree with, like Nazism.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely, yeah. No, yeah, you can
right.
speak
And so
dismissively of the ideas, but you have to recognize that however malicious the ideas, they can take root in people. And I suppose you can be sympathetic to the circumstances by which a person comes to adopt them, if for no other reason than because that sympathy can help you challenge those ideas, but not the
right.
ideas themselves.
So I think we do have pretty different values. All right. There's a brief intersection of cordiality where there is moderate disagreement, but it sounds like past that you're comfortable saying fuck Nazis, and I'm not. And then it also our end goal is different, where I'm not trying to bring people toward my corner to the extent that I even really identify as having a corner.
What is your not corner then?
Um, like I can tell you my stances on various policies, but I think I'm hesitant to really give it a name, even that feels sort of antithetical to what I'm trying to do, right? Like I kind of want everybody to be an independent in a sense, or a centrist, I guess. Where centrist meaning in that you have your stances on individual issues are formed based on your real values and beliefs, and not of those around you, and not from social or political pressure. So I lean into controversial topics on my channel, especially because that's a place for me to sort of like, one, have something interesting to say that other people might not feel free to say or be willing to say. And then two, it kind of just helps me prove like my meta point of like, you can say, this stuff. And the more of us that speak our minds and don't cave to the pressures of our political groups or our friends or neighbors or whatever, the more free we all are.
Maybe. I'm not value neutral about it, though. I would much rather prefer people cave completely to hegemonic values if they're good ones than freely adopt bad values. I don't think we have to make that choice, though. I think if you have the right information and the right guidance, people can freely arrive at good positions.
Yeah, but you're talking them into it. So freely is
You have to talk anyone
loaded.
into anything, don't you? I mean, there's no,
Yeah, but I guess I'm
bipartisanship.
saying I'm trying to talk people out of stuff, and you're trying to talk people into stuff.
You can talk people out of stuff as well, if it's transphobia or racism or whatever. But of course,
But
there's
that's also talking them into. You're trying to move them to a specific location, and I'm saying I'm trying to I'm trying to actively not do that.
you think there's something wrong with pushing a person towards anti-racism?
Yeah.
Why do you think so?
Um. Well, it depends on how you're pushing them, obviously, but I think that Trump and the anti SJW, anti woke movement now is a sign that what we thought was working didn't work that well. That we were only giving the appearance of anti-racism and pushing people to give that appearance, and now they don't want to anymore. And I think that's very understandable, and I have a lot of empathy for the backlash. And
What is
I
the
think that
backlash rooted in?
um, what, like white grievance?
Well, white grievance has been around for a while. You had that back in response to the civil rights movement, and stuff even before then, abolitionism. They formed the KKK because of abolitionism, after all. I mean, it seems like the
Well, that's
blowback you're
understandable
referring
too.
to is an inevitable product of any kind of civil rights push.
Um, I don't think the current backlash is inevitable. I don't even know if the backlash to abolitionism isn't. The freeing the slaves didn't go that well. Like, there's probably a better way to have done this. I would say that like a war is a good metric for like that rollout didn't work.
Well, it wasn't really a
So,
rollout. We had to kill a bunch of folk.
well, I'm saying maybe we didn't have to.
Well, how do you figure that? The South started
Also,
the
I don't know
war.
what maybe we're also the folk that were killed for Americans.
Well, I'm
We
grouping
killed
us
ourselves.
into anti and pro slavery here, which I'd happily consider myself part of the we that had to kill them. But
Okay,
in
but you
terms
see,
of the Civil
my
War,
theoretical approach to this is entirely different from yours. Whereas I think of the South as the we as well.
and what about the slaves? Where do they fit?
They're also the we.
Well, don't you think the we that is the slaves might actually be okay with the fact that we had to fight a civil war to free us?
Yeah, that's my problem. I guess that's what my whole that's why I've come to talk to you, Vaush. That's exactly what I want to talk to you about because I don't um I have problems with that. I have problems with righteous anger, righteous violence, righteous killing. It's the same problem you have with people thinking they can never be Nazis. That I think that if you're going to take a life or take many lives, being circumspect about it is important. And looking back and saying, like, the Civil War was not ideal. It obviously would have been better
Well,
to
nothing's
convince people.
ideal. I mean, if you want to look back over everything in history and argue whether or not it was ideal, well, sure, it wasn't ideal. Nothing's
Well, I didn't
ideal.
mean to present that as a binary. I'm saying it went badly.
Well, yeah, they wouldn't give up their slaves. They left the Union.
Now, but see, I'm saying if you look at it from my perspective, there's no they. It's just that we were trying to make a change, and we made the change, which was a good change. I'm not pro-slavery, and I'm not anti-abolition, but the way we did the abolition turned out to kill like hundreds of thousands of people or something, right? Like 150,000 or 500,000, like a bunch of people, right?
Not as many as the cost of slavery. How would you have solved things then? I mean, they left the Union, you know.
Again, I'm not. You're presenting it as what I'm saying is the dichotomy of um, continue slavery or end slavery. The way we did it, I'm saying I reject that.
Well,
Just
then
like
how
I
would you have
reject
done it?
this. I mean, I would do what I'm doing now. I would try to get people to humanize each other. I think
Well,
if you can,
I think that you'll find the
well, and
slave
then
owners of the South were not amicable to your particular approach. I think they were quite set in their
no
ways.
you're not amicable to my approach, and you're far from being a
L-
slave owner. No one's
Okay,
amicable to my approach.
let
I'm
me
not
let
saying,
me ask you more
yeah,
explicitly, okay? So, with regards to the war effort, we could have fought the Civil War or not. Mind you, the
bro,
South started it, you know, so it's not as though the North had
bro.
prompted it. Hold on. So, if you were there, I mean, you can say, "Oh, I would have convinced him to stop slavery." But like if you
Yes,
want to do
that's
right, okay, sure, then you could have convinced Hitler to not do the Holocaust and you
I
could
would have
have.
done that too.
So, is there any utility to your position here, or would you have just been sort of a time traveling saint, preventing all these atrocities that somehow the world's best statesmen weren't able to prevent in their time?
I don't think that you're being very fair in your setups for these questions.
Saying that
I
you
think
would
that
have
you're,
debated them
yeah.
out of slaveholding is kind of an odd way of going about it. No.
Well, I only said that because you made me say it. And you want me to keep saying weird shit? You can corner me into saying whatever you want. Yes, I would be a time traveling saint. And I've traveled here to you, Vosh. I'm here now to work my saintlyhood, and you're going to bear witness to it.
All right.
And it's
Well,
going to change your life.
then convince me, if you
Well, I
will.
don't want to convince you. Okay, we can talk about that, but I just want to acknowledge what's happening here. First, I'm just trying to introduce myself,
Uh-huh.
and I'm trying to compare my approach to these general problems to your approach. And then you've led us down this path where now you're saying this incredibly complex thing, a war with a million different factors leading into it. Then you say, well, what would you have done? Which is a trap. Anything I say, you can point to the other 99,000 factors that caused it and say, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And then we can play ideological whack-a-mole. But I don't want to do that. One, because I don't think debate is particular. I don't want to debate you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just don't see the point then of
Espe-
discussing some historical event and saying, you know, if your commentary on this is why I would have preferred a nonviolent solution, I'm sure a great many would have. My issue is that,
Would
as is
you?
the case with, sure, if it could be done, I don't think it
Okay.
could be. That's the issue. I don't
Okay,
think anyone
that's
else.
yeah, so it's an idealism thing. That's fine. So my point is not to convince you or anybody that there was an alternative. My point is to say I think there's a different lens through which we can look at historical events that is less us versus them, less good versus evil, with always positioning myself as the good, which you just admitted is not necessarily a good idea to always do that, and to say, what if we look at the way the slaves were freed? In one lens, you can see it as a great success, and in another, you can see it as a momentous failure in how that was accomplished. And I think it's a little self protective to say, well, no, that's the only way that could have happened.
Well,
I don't know that that's true.
the issue is that what you're saying is meaningless. If your prescription here is that
I'm
any
not
historical,
prescribing
hold
anything.
on, if your prescription here is that we should approach viewing these historical events through the understanding that there was a better way, you could say that about anything under any circumstances. Any set of interpersonal or geopolitical circumstances could have gone better than the way it does. Nothing is ever
Absolutely,
perfect.
absolutely. You can always
So,
do it better. My
so
problem
the
is that we do not look at it through that lens.
everybody looks at it that way. Nobody in the ramp up to the Civil War was thinking, all right, there's only one way of doing this. We're doing the Civil War, or we're not doing shit. Nobody thought
No,
that way.
I'm saying looking back.
Looking back, there is no point in thinking of other ways things might have gone through the lens of, well, what if we talked them out of it? Because that didn't happen. People tried, you know. They tried. They left the Union. They made state constitutions
I
specifically
don't
enshrining the right to own black folk. I mean,
I don't agree that there's no point in looking back at past events in your life, or interpersonally or globally, and thinking about what you could have done better.
well, what could they have done better leading up to the Civil War?
This is the same thing you just tried to box me into. You know all of the vectors that pushed us exactly where we went, and that in I agree with you in a sort of fatalistic sense. There was no other way because there's only one reality that can happen, and that's the one that did. And so any factor I say, well, what if we nudge this one this way? You're going to say, well, what about this, and this? And it's a debate. I don't want to debate you about that specifically. If you want to, I mean, it's really a value difference. Like
What is the
if
value
you,
difference?
um, that I believe in taking a narrative that we all have, that we're all raised to believe, that abolition was it was a success.
What is a
And
success?
do you do you do you agree with the premise that the Civil War and the freeing of the slaves is generally viewed by Americans as a good thing that happened?
It was better than the alternative, sure.
Do you believe that Americans generally believe in that there's a dichotomy of the alternative, continuing slavery, and what happened, war?
Yeah, because that's the dichotomy. It again, like, what do you want kids in history class to go? Well, it would have been better if they'd settled everything peacefully.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
yeah, it's just that's such a stupidly naive thing to say that it almost I feel silly even repeating it. It's like, well, of course, obviously,
Well,
yes.
your delivery was not very, courteous to me, but
Well, of course,
that
it
is
would have
what
been
I'm
better
saying.
if they could have just, yes, if there'd been no war and if everything ever could have gone well. But I don't understand what utility looking at this. It doesn't bring us any better understanding of the events at hand, certainly, because it's not pertaining
Well,
to any specific fact set. You're just talking
well,
about
the
it in the abstract. Maybe
well,
things
the
could have
utility.
gone
You
better.
see, if, from my point of view, if I'm looking at a country that is increasingly polarized and divided, we agree that that's happening.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm talking to various political people, and I have my own tiny little platform, my soapbox. That for me, if I'm worried about violence breaking out in the street and people increasing animosity, that people have been taught historically must lead to violence, or it will lead to their worst fear. It will lead to slavery. It will lead to the Holocaust. It will lead to Jim Crow laws, or gay people being stoned to death, or I guess conservatives are afraid of the same things, but happening to white people or happening to Christians, or
No
sort
doubt.
of derecognition, or being having communism, having their rights taken away, or whatever. Those are the things that they're afraid of. If everybody approaches this with that lens, that which I believe is a false dichotomy, which you're saying is just historical truth, then you can see the utility for me of bringing up various events like the Holocaust and saying like turning it over and being like, maybe the way that the Germans were defeated, or that the Jews were, what remained of them, were freed, didn't go that well. Like we won, but like 50 million people died. So
What
that's,
superior military strategies would you have employed on the Western Front to have mitigated the loss of life?
yes, I understand I understand. It's the same thing you just did with the Civil War. I understand that you are well versed in all of the factors leading up to war, and that if any one that I choose, you will bring up 20 more. That's not my point, though.
If you're
My point was,
interested in the mechanisms by which you could avoid large scale conflict altogether, I think those are worth looking at. But I don't think you have to, I don't know, pontificate alternate histories in order to arrive at that. If you don't want there to be another civil war, then that's fine. But then the question is, well,
I
how do
don't
you
want there to
avoid
be
that?
another Civil War.
Well, then how do we avoid that then? I don't want another
Um,
civil war.
well, I think that dehumanization is a necessary step in war, and what I'm concerned about is I see that happening when people disagree about political topics. I'm not specifically pointing a finger at you, but I I think the discourse on all ends, particularly the further you are toward whatever side you're on, becomes increasingly punch Nazis. Um, you know, fuck Antifa, BLM's a terrorist organization, whatever the talking points are.
Do you think that
And
rhetoric is comparable?
yes,
How so?
um, it reads like war propaganda. I just think it's the same thing that you have to convince people of in order to convince them to kill another person. And I I don't think we should be doing that.
Well, should it
And then so
come
that's
down
why
to it,
pedophilia is so attractive to me, because they're the most dehumanized group. And so if I can get people to empathize with pedophiles, if I had my time machine, this is what I would have fucking been doing before the Civil War. Then if you can empathize with a pedophile, you can empathize with anybody, or a Nazi. I guess the right hates pedophiles and the left hates Nazis.
I think that disliking pedophilia is a fairly bipartisan affair, or at least both groups play at it.
There's not a
Um,
hyper fixation. There's a fixation. I don't think the right likes fascism either, but there's a fixation on the right with pedophilia, and there's a fixation on the left with Nazis.
I think that these are largely incomparable, in large part because, first of all, I think a lot of the right's opposition to it is projection, a la QAnon. And second of all, I think that opposition to Nazism is quite justified in almost any form that it takes, constrained only by pragmatism. In fact, I struggle to imagine a scenario in which you would not want children being raised to the tune of fuck Nazis, young people taught why they should hate Nazis in school. Seems like an extraordinary virtuous thing to instill in people.
Well, because of the
Antifa,
reason you
on the
just
other
said
hand,
yourself.
mhm.
Because if you are raised to say fuck Nazis, you're being raised to believe you are not and cannot be a Nazi.
No, I think it's possible to hate Nazis while being sort of understanding of the sociological uh, precursors to it. You know, what leads to it, what internal traits to fight against or to
I don't.
purge.
When I see hate groups, the groups who hate Jews or black people or gay people, I do not see the kind of socio-political, economic empathy that you're describing there.
Yeah,
To
because I don't
me,
think those are comparable. There's no sociological justification, not prescriptively, for hating Jews, black people, gay people. There's a very good one for hating Nazis. Actually, there are quite a few. So I don't
no,
think,
I'm saying that if you hate black people, if you especially say black looters, that hatred is usually not accompanied by a complex understanding that were you a black poor person with the same social and economic and political pressures on you, you might actually do the exact same thing. To me, hate and empathy are mutually exclusive. I guess
I,
just that maybe it's just a semantics thing, but I think raising people to hate Nazis precludes raising people to empathize with the our boogeymen.
I think you can empathize with the circumstances by which people become them. But I think there's something categorically different between bigotry against black people or Jews and hating Nazis. In that, at least by the normative standards most people hold themselves to, you can logically justify hating Nazis.
Yeah,
Opposition
but that's
to
not
or
why.
even violence against them is something that you can construct philosophically and defend at academic levels if you want to. For black
But
people and Jews, that just doesn't track. It's usually
but
biases or just emotional hatred that really justifies their beliefs.
well, I don't think that's true. I think there are legitimate reasons to dislike black people or Jews
What would those
statistically.
be?
Um, well, I think it comes down to a combination of being taught to hate, taught to not empathize, and then taught to uh, I guess just a lack of empathy and a channeling of blame onto those people. I'm
Oh,
not
that
saying
I
that
don't
like,
disagree with, but that can't be prescriptively
but
justified. You could only say like why somebody is that, but
well,
you
that's what
couldn't
I'm saying is
argue in favor of it.
the mechanism by which you're saying people should be raised to hate Nazis is the same way people are raised to hate blacks and Jews
Not
too.
at all. They're very, very different.
I guess we might have to just agree to disagree. I believe if you tell your kids to hate somebody, they probably will.
Well, then how can you prescriptively justify hating Jews or black people? So not explain why people hate it, because that's a sociologist's job, you know, why are people the way they are, but prescriptively argue, you know, why should they feel this way or the other? How could you do that with a minority group? Because I can do it easily with Nazis. Nazis' political views make it actually quite easy to hate them.
Um, if you, I mean, there any group of people is going to do things that make it easy to hate them. I don't
Prescriptively?
think it. I don't know what the difference is here because you could just look around and see any group you see, there's going to be a fuck ton of people who hate that group. And if you ask them why, they'll be able to tell you why, and some of the things they'll say will be true, and some of the things they say won't be true. But
But what if they what so I guess what I'm asking you fundamentally is do you think there's a difference between a good thing and a bad thing or a good argument and a bad argument? Because it
I don't think there's a difference between good hate and bad hate.
okay.
I think that's where our disconnect is.
So
You
was
think it is okay to not empathize with Nazis and to hate them, and I don't.
a slave's hate for his master then is to you the same as the master's hate for his slave?
No, to say they're the same, they're not the same because you just changed the roles, so they're not the same at all. Of course they're not.
That's hate.
I'm
They're
saying
both cases there's hate between them. Is that not the same?
that's not a fair question.
Is it I thought you just said that all hate is the same. I'm sorry if I misunderstood.
No, I said I don't think there's a difference between good hate and bad hate.
So do you think those are both bad hates?
Yeah.
Okay. But you think there's a difference between them?
A difference in how easy it is for me to empathize with one versus the other, for sure. It's a lot easier to empathize with a slave hating their master, obviously.
I think I don't I feel like your association between hate and empathy is tenuous at best. I think it's possible to hate something while still being empathetic. In fact, I
And
think
I
empathy can
don't.
actually enhance hate to an extent because it demystifies the person and it makes you more familiar with, or at least more receptive to, why they might be what they are, which can only throw the terrible nature of their choices further into the limelight. I don't think
Okay,
there's
so do you have
necessarily a
empathy for white supremacists?
it, by empathy. What do you mean?
Oh, it doesn't matter what I mean. We're both using the word already fine until now. My question is like do you have empathy for white supremacists?
I
And
think
you're asking me why, because you're going to say, do I have like a scientific neurobiologist's like dissecting understanding of them? And like I know you have that. But my question is, do you care?
I'm not as educated as you seem to think I am. There are a bunch of characteristics associated with empathy, some of which I feel for white supremacists and some that I don't. So, empathy in that I understand they're humans with fallible decision making systems. Empathy in the sense that I know if born in the wrong family in the wrong time, I could have had the beliefs they have. Certainly. But
But you
empathy,
care about them.
care about, yeah, I have to, you have to change their minds. But empathy, I think, to you, I think you can have empathy for the Nazis as you bomb Dresden. I think that you could have empathy for the slave master while you break his farming tools over his head and steal his clothes. I think you could have empathy for your oppressor as you slaughter them. I don't think, to me, maybe my definition of empathy is different from yours. It's a consideration of their humanity, but humans do things sometimes that make them worthy of death, at least in open conflict. I mean, if not through the judicial system. So we have
I think
different definitions, definitely.
yeah, but that's not, I don't think that's much of a hindrance. I don't believe that people do things that make them worthy of death. I don't believe in the death penalty.
Not
And
judicially, I agree with you. I think there are better ways there. But, if Auschwitz-Birkenau is being staffed by Nazi guards who will open fire when Allied soldiers approach, I don't see any reason why it's morally wrong to crack a few off before you even approach the camp. Or knowing, for example, that there are supply lines that are, feeding the Western Front that you could bomb and save yourself the trouble in the long run. There are plenty of things that you could do that are justifiable and involve death that are not judicial in nature. Warfare, the Civil War. I mean, they started that war after all, kind of brought it on themselves a bit, I
and I,
think.
I think it would be better to admit to yourself that you're probably killing a large number of people who don't really deserve to die.
Sure, but deserving there is kind of a tricky word. The better question for me is there a better alternative which hurts fewer people? And with regards to the Civil War, my belief there is no. I think that by the time the North committed to military action, that was the best possible option. And likewise
Yeah.
with
So
Nazi Germany. We should have started off way earlier with that one, in fact.
so I understand that's your belief, but do you understand mine?
Well, I think that yours is inapplicable mostly. I don't know how you can make decisions if
Well, whether
you're
you think
always
it's stupid or naive, I'm asking, do you understand it?
understand
Do
your
you do you
perceptions.
understand? Do you understand? Yeah. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
I understand where you're coming from. I don't know how it can motivate your decisions though. Like I don't know what like choices it would lead a person to. Like how would it influence their behavior?
My behavior?
If you had control over things, I mean, if you had some meaningful power and you could influence the world. I mean, we all do, of course, in our own way, but maybe more. Um, there's never really the ideal option. There are shades of gray. And for me, it's just a matter of what the least gray shade is. I don't think there's an alternative. I feel that way about voting. I feel that way about ethics broadly. So, do I wish things could have been better? Sure. But I know that there's probably not much utility in fixating on that past the point of no return. Right now, we don't need to have a civil war in the United States, right? I mean, we don't have to, I suppose, but one might happen, maybe, and if it is, then we should be ready for it, shouldn't we? And if it's not, then we should do what we can to prevent it. But I don't think people are gunning for it as though it's a foregone conclusion, at least not yet.
Do you care about white supremacists or other extreme political opponents of yours beyond your ability to make them into you or like you?
Yeah, I would care about then their ability to hurt me and the people I
Do
care
you, do
about.
you do? I'm talking about a Captain Planet, Care Bear, Power Rangers care. You know what I'm asking you?
Care
Do you
about
care?
like
Do
their
you care about them the way you care about like a stray cat on the street
I
that's
suppose
meowing?
I hope they have good lives. I don't think there's any utility in
But
their
do you have an
suffering.
emotional um care? You do you know what I'm asking?
It's just an emotional, like, do I feel for them? I
Yes.
suppose. I mean, they languish, I guess, in their ignorance. I think that's unfortunate, but I don't know how relevant it is. I mean, oh, do you laugh? Do you not think they are ignorant with their white supremacy?
I think that if we were like dating or something, and you said, Max, do you care about me? And I said, you languish in your ignorance. I don't think you would say like, oh, he cares. So it's not
Well, I wouldn't date a white supremacist, you know.
well, yeah. I'm not. That's not my point though. I'm saying um I'm saying do you care? I feel like the answer is no.
Well, I mean, caring has a lot of definitions, you know.
I'm using the one where you care about like a younger sibling, or you care about an old man who's trying to find a seat on the subway. Like the kind of care where, it's not a close interpersonal relationship, but you care about their well-being and you want what's best for them.
My
Not
interest in their suffering begins and ends at points where I think it's politically expedient. Anything past
okay.
that, and I don't benefit at all from them being hurt. And as a
Yes.
general rule, I prefer people to be happy.
Okay. Do you see the difference between that and me saying like I care about Nazis and I care about their feelings and I want to,
Well, it really
help
depends on
them.
their feelings, I suppose. But the nebulousness of the term care is doing a lot of work here. I mean,
Well, you could just see that I'm much more warm and fuzzy towards my political enemies or whatever than you are. Like just
sure,
generally,
yeah.
we can acknowledge that, right?
I think my political enemies well deserve the scorn, you know.
Right. And so you see how that. So again, this is all just part of my introduction. That's the antithetical to what my channel is trying to do. I'm trying to say, give me your Nazis, give me your radical Antifa terrorists, give me your Muslim terrorists, give me your white supremacist, whatever. Whoever's the furthest out, whoever thinks they're the most hated, pedophiles, everybody's welcome. Let's sit and talk. That's my channel, and it's not about trying to get people to switch sides. It's not about turning people against each other, um, and it's not about winning. So all that's just to explain where I'm coming from. Do you still want to discuss one of these three topics?
I'm not going anywhere. Sure.
Well, I was more asking if are you going to eject me, or are we
No, I'm not
we're
ejecting you.
okay, okay.
I just don't know. I mean, you can treat it all with compassion if you want. I distinguish critically between good things and bad things. I actually think that's a very, very important distinction.
Yeah,
Um, and
I think I don't as much.
right. Well, I guess that's a way of thinking of things. Sure. Yeah. With that in mind, though, I have no idea what kind of prescriptive statements you could ever make on any issue if you don't distinguish between good and bad things and just sort of ubiquitously believe all people deserve consideration regardless of the morality of their positions. I don't know where you'd go from there.
I guess that yeah, that's just not my compass by which I would make prescriptive statements or have preferences. I guess I think more of it as preferences. Like, if I see somebody riding their bike and then somebody says, "Do you want that person to get hit by a car?" I will say no because I don't want it. It's not a philosophical stance. So I don't. Well, let's just see what happens.
Yeah, I'm not
So
going anywhere.
do you want to pick one of these topics? Should we let the chat pick one?
No,
Or
dealer's choice. What do you have the strongest opinions on?
are you sure? I don't think I'm the dealer, but I get what you're saying. Um, well, I just talked to Destiny about gender for a long time the other day.
Well, then perhaps out of respect for the people who watch both of our channels, the poor bastards, you should talk about BLM or something else.
Something else meaning pedophilia.
Or that.
Well, it's yeah. I think your stances on pedophilia are going to be more controversial than mine. If you're still sticking to your, there shouldn't be. I what'd you say? I've seen no moral or legal argument about why child porn should be illegal. And a lot of people think I'm a pedophile. So I could do like a little PR repair by arguing against you there.
I think that my
Um,
views on the subject are quite a lot less controversial than most people believe. I think I was making a very spicy argument against unethical commodity consumption that has been wildly misinterpreted. Such is life.
oh yeah, I know what argument you were making, but well, I've heard two quote. Okay, let's talk about pedophilia because I'm I'm getting ready to make a big video about pedophilia. I think in the next few months, and I think you know chewing over some of the ideas with you might be a good idea. And it probably won't do anything for my image now that I'm thinking through what I'm saying. Okay, so do you want to explain yourself, Vash?
Oh, it's probably nothing
Well,
my community hasn't heard, and also probably nothing you've not heard. But
my
I
understanding
think
is that you
it's
were saying if we're
bad to
gonna,
have sex with children. It's a hot
yes,
take
I
in
know.
some circles, anime lovers and the like, but you know.
My understanding is that your stance
Mhm.
is that if you're gonna say it's okay to indirectly use child slave labor, then child porn is not that different,
My
and that
sta
it's hypocritical
My
to.
stance is that society has taken the easy route by denouncing an element of unethical consumption that they can all very easily agree is terrible, as it is,
Yes,
and that
yes,
they have been very, very deliberately silent in other ways in which children are hurt.
yes. You're saying they're both bad, not that they're both good, obviously,
That's
or that
correct.
one is good. Yeah,
And I'm
I got that.
quite happy that one of the two, at the very least, is currently criminalized.
Okay. Do you think owning child porn should be a crime?
Yeah, might as well, right? I mean, we've already done the work on that one. No sense in undoing it.
Okay. Um, let's go to other. Do you think pedophilia, to any extent, is a sexual orientation?
I'm not entirely sure what the DSM's definition of a sexual orientation is. I don't.
Well, let's say we were writing the DSM.
I think it's categorically different from heterosexuality, homosexuality, or anything else like that.
Do you think it is, to any extent, do you think it is the same as any of those things?
I mean, I suppose it manages people's attraction towards others, but apart from that, and I don't even think that's the critical point, right?
Um, so do you see any utility in labeling it as a sexual orientation?
No, I think it'd be the opposite of utility. The medical terminology is geared around the relationship between our brains and normative social behavior. Mental illnesses, after all, are defined as things that cause us harm in society. They prevent us from functioning normally. And I think that pedophilia, as you might guess, prevents one from functioning normally, to not put too fine
Right.
a point on it. A sexual orientation should be something normal and healthy, but pedophilia can never be that. So a paraphilia is what it should be defined as. And I think that is what it's defined as presently.
I believe it is. Do you think that there is ever any utility in thinking of it as functioning like a sexual orientation? I'm not talking. When I ask this question, I'm saying, let me rephrase it. To what extent and why do you think it is a good idea to label it as a sexual orientation in various situations? For example, if you're trying to empathize with a pedophile, or if you're trying to understand that this conversion therapy might not work for this person, or that this person, yes, should be treated as though they're mentally ill or receive treatment for whatever, blah blah. But also, it should be seen as this kind of like immutable part of themselves that they and maybe others are just going to have to live with.
No, because I think even if empathy was your goal, and one which could be, I think, in some circumstances quite suspect, depending on the relevant intentions, you can still be empathetic towards a person with a mental illness. You'd still define it as something socially non-normative, something destructive and harmful. By referring to it as a paraphilia, as opposed to a sexuality, you normalize its unhealthy relationship with social function, which I think is good, because of course, if you called it
But you think it's
a
100%
sexuality,
good.
as to not refer to it as a sexuality, yes, I think it's bad to refer to it as a sexuality.
But I'm saying you think it's purely bad. Like there's no ever reason to ever think about it like that at all, no matter what.
Suppose if aliens had a gun to your head and told you they'd shoot you if you didn't change your definitions? I mean, you could always find some edge case. As a social rule, though,
Well, I'm asking
overwhelmingly...
you to search your heart and see if there is an edge case in there. And if you don't find one, then sure. But that's what I'm asking you about the edge cases, and something more realistic than the alien scenario.
I can't think of one. The alien scenario was my honest to God best effort. I don't think that there's any reason to. Even if your goal was empathy or, corrective treatment or anything like that, I still think that you would have to refer to it as a paraphilia. I think there'd be more utility in that. I don't know what utility there'd be in the opposite, really.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were a therapist, right? I mean, if, for example, if you go into therapy and you say, I think I might have this, that, or the other, it's quite bad. They'll refer to it as a paraphilia, but I don't think that's antithetical to their goal of treating or mitigating, your non-normative or harmful sexual desires. I think those are in line.
Is it ever good to if you're a pedophile to stop thinking of yourself as sick? To if you can't fix it.
You can't fix it. I don't know.
Like, you're supposed to just accept that it's a paraphilia. I guess that there's something wrong with you, that there always will be.
Yeah, well, I think sickness is kind of vague there. You have to accept that it's always going to be a harmful part of you. If it's something that you can't fix, I mean, what is or isn't a sickness? That encompasses a lot of stuff. Having the sniffles is a sickness. In this case, it would be, having a predatory desire or having a predilection towards predation or something like that. That goes beyond sickness. I mean, sickness isn't necessarily socially wrong. This would be some people have a compulsive violent thoughts, for example. I know that's a thing. Like some schizophrenics might have that, for example. If they want to go with sickness as the word they'd use there, then fine. I mean, the important part is that they know those thoughts are never acceptable, something they should act on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I agree with you. What other contentious questions are raised about this? Wait, I'm going to change my headphones because my headphones are dying.
Been known to happen.
Yeah. Okay, can I still hear you?
I can hear you.
Oh, maybe not. Oh, I have to change them in Discord. Hang on. I forgot. Okay. Nice. Okay. Next question. Simulated child porn lolly stuff.
I think it's pretty sussy.
What does that mean?
I think that if you have an interest in that sort of stuff, you should definitely be checking yourself as to why. The thing that really bothers me about this shit, apart from the fact that anytime you want to look at like hentai on a hentai site, you have to like negate the tag lolly and thus 50% of the site's content. The thing that bothers me is people who pretend there's no relationship whatsoever between like drawn lolly shit and actual attraction to children. Of course there's a relationship between those things. Ridiculous to pretend otherwise. So they need to be aware of that, if anything.
Are you saying that based on common sense, or is there any evidence of that?
Any evidence of that? You mean, okay, so I've had a bunch of links thrown at me by people who are, again, very sussy, trying to argue there's not actually a relationship between instances of child predation and access to like lolicon or whatever.
Well, I would assume there is a correlation between people who really want to believe that and people who are pedophiles. So
yeah, I'd be willing to bet that.
For sure that I'm going to agree with you there, but just you where you're at now, I'm saying, are you arriving at that because of like some study I don't know about, or you just think it's obvious?
It's not a study that I'm not speaking on this through a study you're not aware of. I think it's categorical. I think that the fetishization of youth, to the extent that you're fetishizing the bodies or mentalities of underage people, is categorically harmful. Because even if somehow, and I don't know if there's any research indicating this, even if somehow you could find that there is zero correlation between any criminal behavior there at all, and you know, the widespread consumption of hentai, lolicon, whatever, you know, I still think that it normalizes quite negative things, you know. Or to put it another way, like if I was a kid again, you know, and I'm not, and I like found my dad like looking at like fucking big honkin' Hooters porn one day or some shit like that, like that'd be
Yeah.
awkward as hell. But you know, life goes on. The sun rises in the morning. But if I like walked into my parents like or whatever else consuming like lolly or Shotokan or some shit like that, I think that would irreparably damage my trust in them. That there'd be some fundamental, like forevermore, some disconnect between them and my ability to trust them. And I think there's
I don't think
reason
I
for
don't
that. It's not
I don't
just
think
like,
we should get. I don't think we should get too personal here.
well,
Uh,
I'm just trying to explain that it's so I don't, without working on data here, I feel like it's just bad to fetishize that kind of stuff. We fetishize the fuck, for instance, out of female youth. You know, we do it to men too, to an extent, but mostly to women. And this like evolves in so many creepy ways that things don't even get talked about, like child beauty pageants or this.
yeah,
Yeah, the obsession with like
that's
barely
essentially
legal
porn.
teen.
Yeah, and then barely
Yeah.
legal.
So it's
Yeah.
it's holistic. It's not just lolly or shota, though I think that's, you know, a particularly egregious outcropping of it. I think it's just this whole like long-standing global infatuation with young women. I guess youth in general, but the lolly stuff's more of a problem than the shota stuff. And I think that should stop. It's probably pretty bad, you know.
Stop. And you think it should stop by what mechanism?
Culturally, I think it has to be opposed. So like
Okay, so you think it should be legal, but we should be like,
you could
hey,
raise.
Dad, don't do that.
Well, I'd hope I'd say that. You can raise the age of consent to 25, but then there would be like barely legal 25-year-old girl porn. Like that's going to remain no matter what like you legislate around it. And you can do whatever you want with lolly or shota, but then people are going to draw 1,000-year-old girls who just happen to have the bodies of
Okay,
10-year-olds. You can
here's
always
a
work
thought.
your way around that crap.
Here's a thought experiment. I'm gonna open a string of strip clubs in Las Vegas. And it's gonna be called Mr. Girls, uh, whatever you want Emporium. Okay,
Hmm.
and in one strip club, the strippers are 25, 24, 23, 22, all the way down to infants. But each strip club, and this is a sovereign state, so there's no laws. In each club, everyone is the same age. Okay, so if you want to
Hmm.
watch babies crawl around, or you want to watch 100-year-olds, we'll start at 100. So basically, everybody and everybody on all the women on the planet have to work here. My question is, in America now, which club do you think would be the most popular if this were to open tomorrow?
In a sovereign state adjacent to America.
Yeah, and it's like there's no one identities are there's no issues of social ostracization. Nobody knows. Everybody's wearing whatever disguises.
The closest
Not the
argument you could
strippers.
make there, I think, is from European literature from ye olden days, and it seems like predation against girls spiked up around like 14 to 16. So
I'm asking,
if all the
but just looking
degenerate
around
sex
you.
tourists, hmm?
Yeah, looking around you at America now. I want you to base this just on your sense. You know a lot of people. You talk to a lot of people about this. And we all
You know,
look
I
at
haven't
porn.
talked to a lot of people about this specifically. I'm going
Okay,
to
well,
be
we
forthcoming.
run in different circles, but based on your observations of American humans,
Hmm.
which club is the most popular?
I,
Let's say
I
men, straight men are going, and they're women.
Culturally, I don't think that we've done anything to appropriately discourage that kind of predatory behavior towards girls. So my guess is that it would be somewhere between 14 to 17. I think
Well,
that culturally
what if
we've
it's
done
a one-way mirror?
extremely
The girls
little.
don't know. The girls don't know that you're. Is it even predatory to go look at them? They don't know that you're looking at them.
I would say
It's
that
a
it's
one-way.
predatory.
It's a website where you can log in and look at locker rooms. Just forget the slavery
I
aspect.
would I would continue to believe that's predatory for
Yeah, for sure.
multiple
But a
reasons.
much harder type of predatory behavior to discourage if no one will ever know that camera was there.
If you put a camera in an underage girl's locker room and the police found it, I assure you that they would be able to very quickly, succinctly, and with great confidence explain to you what you did wrong.
All right, then I have to go take care of something. No, I'm just kidding. All right, what? Okay, what if? Okay, motherfucker, you're adding all this shit in. I want you to.
I'm not.
Okay.
If you're trying to catch me in a hot take, it's not. I've argued raising the age of consent.
I'm not trying to catch. Do you think I'm trying to trap you after what I said to you? After I told you I was a Care Bear, and you think I'm trying to. You think this is a sting? Listen, androids, fucking perfect replicas. The strip thing again. No one is getting hurt. They just look exactly like humans. My question is, which club is the most popular? My question is, where do you think we're at? And I'm asking it in kind of a exciting way because we're in public. But where do you think we're at? What is?
I genuinely don't think that much has been done to culturally disbar the average modern guy from the attitudes that we had back in antiquity towards women and attractiveness towards women.
And what number?
I think it would be somewhere
do you not
from
want to answer
14.
This question?
No, I think it'd be somewhere from 14 to 17. I don't think we've changed.
Those are big. That's a big difference.
I have no idea, and I couldn't even begin to think by which categories I would separate them.
You know, I had a someone I knew who.
Just, you know, if you're going to admit to any crimes, I would really rather not be listed in whatever federal reports are filed, so I would prefer it be done in a video on your stream, unrelated to my own.
No, there's no crime.
Huh.
No crimes.
Hopefully not, because it was kept in a sovereign state, as opposed to the United States of America.
Yeah, this takes place in the United States. It actually takes place in Beverly Hills. Wait, are you? Can I ask you some biographical questions?
Sure.
Are you from Beverly Hills? I've heard this, but I don't know if it's true.
Yeah, I was born there.
Okay, but you don't live there?
No.
Okay. Because I worked in Beverly Hills for many years as a personal trainer. And so in the gym, you get to know people from different countries with different norms. And man, the shit they would say about high school girls and tell me like that if they could be with a girl of any age, if it was socially acceptable, it would be 15. It was like super like normal to them. It's very, very different from online discourse. Okay,
yeah, I think it's deeply unfortunate.
Yeah, I want to get to that in a second. But you're saying 14 to 17, and you won't pick a number?
I will absolutely not pick a number within the range.
Because you don't have a guess, or because you don't want to be clipped saying it?
Because I don't even know by what category you would distinguish into that group, and because I'm referring only to my feelings on other people's predilections, not to my own. So you're not asking me for my preference, you're asking me what I expect of the average American.
No,
a group of which I have a very low impression.
Okay, but you don't want to say the number.
I don't have a number. Do you have a number? Is there a number you're looking for?
I think it's 15.
Well, I suppose we'll leave it to the historians to judge.
Maybe 16. It might be. I think it would be 14 at first, and then it would move up once the novelty wore off. I think it would be 15 or 16.
Is this consideration in line with your desire to empathize with pedophiles, or is it something more personal than that?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, you sound like a pedophile, not a person who wants to promote empathy for socially misaligned people.
Why do I sound like a pedophile?
Because you're dedicating a considerable amount of thought to the subject of what type of underage girl people would be most interested in.
What color, if you had to guess what color their underwear would be, Vaush, what would you say?
Yeah, okay.
No,
you see that? You people ask for debates, and what do we get? This is on you. What could we have had? Metroid Prime stream. What did we end up having? Whatever the fuck that was. Alright, if you all get any Discord DMs from a Mr. Girl, I strongly suggest you screen those. Alright. to create the empathy for so this is what I mean by like the the Trojan horse thing, right? Okay. So here's a statement that most psychologists would agree with, okay? In order to minimize the harm done to children, okay, we have to maximize the number of people with pedophilic predilections go to therapy. That's the we have to maximize the number of people who go to therapy because that's the best way of preventing harm to kids, right? And one of the ways that you can increase the likelihood of that happening is by by like making it known that if they go to therapy, they'll like get treatment. Like they're not just going to be like burned at the stake or whatever, you know. And that's true, you know. And sometimes people do approach this subject in a way which makes essentially they use language that would like make pedophiles think they should never go to therapy because if they do, they'll be like fucking outed by their therapist and their life will be over, blah, 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 and that increases the likelihood of harm, blah, blah. The issue is that there are plenty of people, you know, this may or may not be relevant to our current conversation, who will sort of Trojan horse actual creepo shit into that relevant point. You know what I mean? So the relevant point there would be like, okay, well, I think in order to minimize harm done, you have to you have to be able to be like, if not empathetic, then at least like you have to use language that increases the likelihood of getting them to therapy. But then it's like, then all of a sudden we're talking about the color of girls' panties when they are at hypothetical underage, you know, stateless society strip clubs or whatever. So yeah, so sometimes that shit gets you know, Trojan horsed in a little bit. His name is Mr. Girl because that's his ideal relationship dynamic. Yeah. Listen to the song, We're Begging You. It might have a copyright ID. So the song is called I Can Fantasize About Whatever I Want. And the third line is I probably shouldn't read out loud because if I did, I would get clipped for it. People think that I would be saying it in reference to myself. Now that's what I call a conversation. Hey, you all owe me donations after that, okay? Massive fucking donations. He also has 2 other songs called I Am a Pedophile and Kill All Pedophiles. Look, regardless of whatever, you know, incredibly nuanced hidden messages he's buried into his produced content, I think we can all agree that that conversation lasted too long. Yeah, wait, for those of you who saw, how did his convo with Destiny go? Was it, he said he talked about gender stuff. Was it, what happened there? Was it the same, did it run down the same, thought the convo was Destiny with boring and I didn't finish it? Well, you know, if there are any adjectives people would ascribe to this conversation, boring probably is not one of the first ones they would use. Need to run a more thorough check on people like him before taking bait. Chendal, what am I supposed to do? You people explicitly want me to bring crazies on for debate. That's what you talk about. Jesus, like, back and forth with people.